Thank you. Okay, next up, ladies and gentlemen, is we have Mr. Rob Howard, who is the owner of the Online Language Center and Business Language Training Institute. Okay, is EFL Talks founder, IA TEFL Poland vice president, IA TEFL, I probably say this wrong, sorry, BESIG joint coordinator, teacher trainer and writer on business English. Okay, Rob is going to be talking to us about upskill or standstill, the need to retool. Right, Paul, over to you because you are the technical department this morning.
Lucky me. Well,
Okay.
the floor is yours, Mr. Howard.
Okay, I can't start my video because you stopped it. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, let me try. Video is blocked.
Oh. Okay, that's something that technical department needs to have a look at, I think.
Okay.
But you should at the very least be able to share your screen now.
Okay, let me do that in the meantime. Nope.
Okay.
Can't share.
Okay, one moment. See if we can find a different button. Okay, it's okay. Want to try now? I think we've lifted it up to co-host level, so you should be able to try now.
All right, still not coming up for share. Let's try the camera.
There's a flicker. Aha!
There we go.
There we go.
Okay, yeah, it's all part of the fun on a Saturday morning. Okay.
Yes. I have to apologize. I'm sitting in the hallway of the university here in Dublin, where I'm talking later on today. So the only place strong Wi-Fi was here in the hall, but I brought balloons for you.
Oh yeah,
Lovely.
balloons! I love a good balloon.
Okay. We don't have balloons. Okay.
I know. I'm kind of jealous.
What a shame. But I brought them for you.
Yay.
Anyway, hopefully it'll be relatively quiet because the plenary is going on and we won't have any noise. So I'll get started. First of all, thanks for having me and thanks for being here. And what I want to talk about, we just heard the word upskill. And this is something that is very near and dear to my heart because I think it's definitely time for teachers to retool. And if we look at what's happened over the past 3 years, all of a sudden, everyday classroom teachers have suddenly had to go to teaching online and learning digital skills. And this is just one of the many things that you need to do for tomorrow's learner. So as everybody said, I'm pretty busy. I'm the joint coordinator of the IITEFL BSIG, and we deal with business English. And I do a lot of different things, so I keep very busy, but we'll skip ahead. Now, one thing, I'm not an academic, I'm not a researcher, I'm not a PhD, I'm a practitioner. My background and my degrees are all in computer science and in business. I was a businessman in the United States for years. And when I moved to Brazil for my first retirement, people asked me to teach them English, and I really loved it. So I started teaching English and took more courses in that. And I do have a minor in secondary education. So I've been teaching business English and English to students all over the world online for over 20 years now, even though I look very young. But I grew up in the United States, and I went to one of the top-rated high schools in the United States when I was a child. It's the reason my parents moved there. Then I went to a small university. Then I transferred on to a larger state university where I took my teaching certification, and then later on to an Ivy League. So I spent a lot of time on education. But what did 12 years of public school education and a good quality education and then 6 years of university leave me prepared for in my career? Nothing. You know, what did I learn? In the school system, I learned to say yes. And this is what the schools normally are teaching you. They want you to agree with everything that's taught to you. And as far as developing ideas and creativity, they stopped that. And it was unfortunate because they stifled free thought, creativity, and growth. And instead of building lifelong learners, it was an attempt to build lifelong workers. If anybody's seen the Ken Robinson video that goes through and talks about this, we were building assembly line workers. And the funny thing is, we're so far away from that, but the education system really hasn't changed. And today, we live in a whole different world, and we have a whole different learner. We have different needs that are happening. So we have to start some kind of new explosion and really change education. Now, the reality is that people need communication and collaboration skills. This is something that we should be focusing on all the time. And it's great because as English teachers, we do focus on communication. And when we're working with groups, we do focus a little on collaboration. But we also have the need for creativity, ideas, and growth, which if you've looked at the World Economic Forum, what we need for the future. And we also need development in language and intercultural skills, because it's no longer a small world. You're not dealing just within the United States or Brazil. Just the other day, I had 9 classes, and I didn't even realize this till I looked at it. I was in 9 different countries in one day, teaching students around the world. So this need is changing. And it's a need that causes professional skills and upskilling. Now, these are skills that are related to specific skills needed for life, but mostly skills that are needed for the job, and skills that are relative to the job role in the industry that people will be working in. And it's basically, we're looking at real life business situations, or what people are going to need. And we need to focus and concentrate on that, because if we look at it, most people, when they're entering the job market, are going to have to do these things: writing reports, negotiating, discussing strategies, logistics, making small talk, leading trainings. So this is what they need in the future. Now, is general English enough? And most of the time we're teaching general English. Now, when you look at today's learner, you know, they're not studying English for 8 years to go to Disney, or maybe to go to overseas to study or to watch Netflix movies. 90 to 95% mostly will be using English for a job in the future. So I feel we need to be starting right now, going all the way back to high school, university, and reemployable adults, the people that are coming to us now, learning English or relearning English for the job. And foreign speakers, expats like myself. I'm currently living in Poland, even though I'm in Ireland today, and I'm having to learn Polish. Before, I had to learn Portuguese for Brazil. So we have people who are all over the world in different countries, and they need to bring up the level of their English for communication. So are the learners prepared for this? No. And if you look at many of the articles that you'll see everywhere, employers are not satisfied with the level of English with people that are coming into the job market these days. And this is a problem, and this is something that we need to work on. 87% of communication globally now is in English, and 57% of internet content is in English. Now, that's a lot of information that people who don't speak English are missing out on. So let's talk a little bit about communication skills. Is the education system really prepared to work on communication skills? And the real question is, are the teachers really prepared for this? So I know we have a lot of programs, and they're very successful programs all over the world. We have people that are teaching with CLIL, they're teaching STEM, people are teaching one-to-one classes, and everybody's online like I teach now. And learners have a lot more places to go to learn. They can go to apps, they can do peer interaction. Now, as you've probably seen if you've been following social media, they can use AI guided learning. And then of course there's VR and AR. Look at Duolingo. Duolingo, who basically came out of nowhere a few years ago, now boasts that it has 500 million users. I wish I had that many students myself. I'd be rich. And you look at Google. Google is coming out with their own platform for teaching languages. It's been in development for a few years. I have a friend who's actually working on it, and he said it's going to change the way education is. Now, when we look at it, today's learner is a lot pickier than they used to be, and they're more creative. We need to change ourselves and get the skills to deal with this type of learner these days. Because today's learner, they have a lot more sources. They can learn off of TV, off the internet, off of the cell phone, and they have many more resources that just really weren't available to them before. Now, when I was young, I remember in school, I took 4 years of French, and I sat there in a room like this. Actually, mine was even worse. It was closed off, just repeating and repeating and repeating. This is the old way that language was taught. And surprisingly, my French is terrible. So one thing we have to keep in mind is scalability. People are out there looking for solutions, and they need to be scalable. Now, I'm one teacher. I really can't teach a lot of people at the same time. I don't want to. I want to work with the individual. But when we get into AI and we get into what's coming down the road, when we look at the economy of scale, excuse me, it's going to be a lot less expensive to go with digital solutions. And we already have these now. If we look on the internet, we have asynchronous classes, we have pre-recordings, we have automation, and we have Moodles. Students are using these more and more. So they're getting away from the traditional teacher because the teachers aren't offering what they need. So what is the problem? The problem is that the whole industry has changed. And the nail in the coffin right now is our new competition. There's our new competition. The people that we've supported over the years and that we've used their books, they are now coming out with their own platforms, and they are going directly to the student, bypassing the teachers altogether. So they're making offerings for their own courses, for their own digital courses, and they have no need for teachers anymore. Also, if we look at it, I don't know how it is where you are, I'm sure it probably is, but if you look in Brazil, if you look in the United States on the internet all the time, everybody who speaks English and has a camera suddenly is an English teacher. So we have competition everywhere, but the biggest competition we have is going to be price. Now, I'm assuming that most of you are university teachers. I happen to do freelance. So maybe the price isn't going to be as big of an issue for you as a university. But for me as a freelancer, price is a big deal. So what are students going to need? If you look at what the World Economic Forum said, here's a big list of things they need: ethics, interviewing, leadership, all these things. But the main key that we can work and help with is communication. They're going to need to write reports. They're going to need to give presentations. They're going to need to email other people, and they need to communicate. And this is what we can help them with as teachers the most. And when you look at it, I teach mostly C1, C2 students. So basically, when you think about it, I am teaching the students that we tried to teach in a regular course years ago, but failed, or they stopped using English, they forget, and they're coming back to get refreshers. But when you think about it, it's really the failure that we didn't give them exactly what they needed the first time. And my whole concept of this upskilling is that we have to change, because what's happening is people that are entering the workplace to try and use English, they're lacking skills. Now, they're not lacking leadership skills, interviewing skills, all these other skills that are important in their own language, because obviously they have these skills or they wouldn't have their job. But the thing is, what they do is they're lacking the skill of communicating these skills in English, which means that they lack confidence in speaking. So this causes language anxiety, and we know that when people get anxious, they avoid using the language. I remember speaking to people in Brazil all years ago, and talking to them in Portuguese. They say, "Oh, I studied English for 10 years." And I said, "Great, talk to me." "Oh, no falo nada." 10 years that they studied, and they're avoiding use of basic common language. You do this in the workplace, and that causes problems. So students have this self-perception of incompetence, not incompetent at their job, but incompetent of communicating in English. So what we need to do is we want to increase student achievement. In order to do this, we have to increase our effectiveness as facilitators, because students need commitment, collaboration, and engagement. But in order to give them that, we need more knowledge, we need to give them more support, and we need more accountability in what we're doing. So these are numbers just out of the United States that I got these. These are very hard to find all over the world. But right now in the United States, 50% of high school students are not academically ready for university. 59% of high school students will attend a 4-year university. That means 41% are not going. And 50% of universities are going to be bankrupt in 10 to 15 years. Now, the small university I went to is no longer around. It's closed. It was bought by another university. That university then closed. So things are changing. The things that we thought they'll be around forever, students have different ways of learning. Fewer and fewer students now are going to university because they're on TikTok, they're becoming influencers, they're becoming entrepreneurs, they're finding different ways to make money and to build their career. But the funny thing is, if you look at the technology companies out there, like let's say Google and Meta and Microsoft, fewer and fewer technical employers want college graduates because they feel that the college didn't give them practical skills that they needed. And here's an interesting quote. If nothing else, I hope this sticks with you. Brilliant writer said this. Oh, it's me. But think about it. It's easier to fix and teach an empty, fresh mind than it is to get somebody who's got a fixed mind with the wrong information So it's easier to take a high school student and make them a good employee rather than take somebody who's gone through with experience but lacks skills. So in a perfect world, everything will be great. We're going to be face to face. Everybody will collaborate. Everybody will communicate. Everybody speaks the same language. But you know what? It's not a perfect world anymore. Reality is that we have people that are communicating online from all over the world. And for most of them, English is their second, maybe third language. So the proficiency that they have in communicating is not only lower than, let's say, maybe a native speaker or somebody who's speaking at a high C2 level, but also we have the intercultural problems that are involved now in the way language can be different. So looking at things like just the tone or the nuance or the message, if there's so many different ways of saying the same thing and giving a different message. As a native speaker, I understand that when I hear another American say, really, or really, or really, there's a different message to all three of those. The thing is, will somebody who's learning English as a second or third language understand that nuance due to the tone? So what we have to work with them more is meaning. And it is, what did you mean? And it depends on the message that they're trying to send. And we need to help them with this because customer service, sales support, product management, all of these people need stronger tonal skills, nuance skills to work with people. Then we look at the leadership skills, negotiation, critical thinking, conflict, all the things that we hear that they have to use going into, the next era for work. We need to make sure that they're able to discuss these things in English. Now, unless you're teaching management, English for management, unless you're teaching English for business, if you're just teaching English as an English class, chances are you're not discussing any of these subjects. And this is what they need to practice and be able to communicate. So we need to understand their needs. We need more defined outcomes. We need to create new strategies, and we need to focus on the results for our learners in the future. Now, here's where it comes down to. We need to improve our skills in order to help the students. Now, I'm very lucky. As I said, my background was in business. So having a business background where I did negotiations, sales, customer service, all of these things makes it very easy for me to work with a student in that. But most teachers never had to work on these skills. They didn't have to negotiate. They didn't have to worry about leadership or management. So they lack the basic business skills that they need to help the student of the future. Sure, you can help them with the language, but if you don't understand the language of business and of the workplace, how are you going to help them? That's a big question. So what we have to do is, just like you have a cell phone, just like you have a computer or a tablet, you need to recharge yourself. And you need to update your software. So this means taking courses, learning more, learning a bit about business English. I know it's a scary word for a lot of people. They tend to shy away and run away when they hear it. Think a bit of workplace English. Think a bit of life skill English. Let's rename it. But you need to update yourself. You need to upskill. And this is basically the message that I'd like to get across. You know, you hear everybody talking about becoming an agent of change, but what needs to be changed? We need to change education, change the learner, change the outcome. But most of all, what needs to change is ourselves. We need to get more skills, upskill and retool ourselves if we're going to be able to help the student for today and into the future. So I've talked very quickly because I wanted to leave you some time, and I'd love to hear your feedback and your questions. So I'll leave more time for questions and discussion than anything else, but here's how you get a hold of me. And with that, I haven't looked at the chat yet, so I'm going to stop sharing so I can look at the chat. And we have some questions. I don't even know how much time we have left. We have 40. Okay, we have about 15 minutes. So, questions. I left some perfect questions open, and we have some hands raising.
We do actually have some posted questions already. One that I like, Ashraf Phil, I apologize if I pronounced your name wrong. How do we promote effective practice of AI in blended learning?
Get my next book. Get my book. It's coming out. I'm writing it right now. And this is going to be interesting because what we need to do is, rather than trying to fight AI, it's here to stay. We need to learn to find ways to work with it. And there's a lot of great ways. I've been playing around with it. We need, number one, first thing we can do is teach them how to ask the right question. If you've played around with ChatGPT at all, sometimes it's very hard to get the answer you're looking for unless you ask the question the right way. And this is brilliant for getting them to work on their questioning skills, because we're so used to, as teachers, asking them questions, they've never practiced asking questions. So right there, use ChatGPT to build and refresh your questioning. The other thing that we can do is, there's so many things we can do. I'm working on a book right now, 50 ways to teach using it. So learn to embrace it. You can take, you can give them an assignment, for example. Say, you know, write up a paragraph about this, and then put the same question into ChatGPT, and then compare the language, compare the structure. There's a million ways. Find it, play with it, don't be afraid of it, because you're going to have to incorporate it into your life, because students will. I could go on for 2 hours with that. We'll have to set up another webinar.
Entirely possible. It is, yeah, when I read the question, it's a case of, okay, big topic. That's going to be a whole session in its own right.
Sure.
Especially considering we're still kind of figuring out what AI is actually capable of doing for us.
Right.
It's absolutely outstanding where it's already at. And yeah, I think it's a case of let's jump in now before it takes over the world.
That's it. You know, we have limited time. I'm glad I'm old. You know, Paul, you're young. You've got about another 30, 40 years left in you.
I've got more than enough gray hair.
Good. So, not me. I'm blonde.
Well, I must confess, my partner was just last week. She commented, "It's like you're finally grey with brown." So the switch has happened. So yeah, but no, AI is, well, yeah, it's going to happen. I've decided, but I'm fully grey. I'm just going to go red, because why not?
There you go.
Yeah, I must admit, the whole area of AI is absolutely fascinating, especially for languages, because for a long time that's been one area where, like, if you look at Google Translate, In its early days, how you could put in
Mhm.
something in English and it would come out in another language as
Yep.
a complete word salad. And it's amazing how accurate that's now become.
Not anymore. I do it. I have one of the translators that comes with Alexa, which is the Amazon product. And I've tried it with all my students that speak different languages going back and forth, and it's spot on. It's amazing how
Yeah.
accurate these things have become. And they're only going to become better.
Yeah.
That's the thing. We have to learn to deal with it. One interesting thing with ChatGPT, we were, with the BSIG, we do some writing for the journal all the time. And we were like, oh, what are we going to write this month? And so I jokingly said, oh, let me put it into ChatGPT. And it actually came back with something that I had written in the past. So for me to copy it, I would plagiarize myself, plagiarized by ChatGPT, because it only gets what it can find.
Yeah.
And all it could find was what I had already written. Brilliant stuff.
It's utterly fascinating and also slightly terrifying in the same time. Okay, another question from Mariam Badrui. What major paths for CPD to get ready to meet the new challenges?
What I would recommend, it depends what you're doing. It depends where you're coming from. Again, I come from the land of freelancers. So for me, I'm dealing with business people specifically. My niche is C1, C2 business professionals, a lot of lawyers, a lot of IT. The first thing that I would do is learn to embrace and start learning about these cultures, learn the words, learn the technology, learn a little bit about it. You don't have to become an expert, but you do have to be able to understand some of the more common words. And this is another thing that ChatGPT is brilliant for, because if I'm working with an IT person and I don't know a lot about IT, I just go into ChatGPT and say, give me 10 good IT questions to ask a student. And you'll get things that are very important to them, and it's relative. So the first thing I would say, embrace ChatGPT, but also start learning a little bit more. Because I deal with C1, C2, what I always do is teach me to do your job. And this way I learn what's important to them. I learn how they normally communicate, and they feel more confident, but because they're using the language of their job. So by learning a little bit and take notes and try and learn this stuff, because you can use it for the next student, you know?
Yeah.
So learn. I recommend to everybody, if you're going to be working with anybody who does business, go to Udemy or Coursera. You can take like Business 101 for free. That's the first place to start. So you have a basic idea of what business is about. Because as teachers, yeah, we're great teachers, but you have to understand something about business.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you think about, you're talking about how students today have far more access to internet and how publishers are now beginning to go around teachers. I mean, for a long time, teachers were effectively the gatekeeper of knowledge. Because it literally was all funneled into the classroom, then through the teacher. Whereas today, students can go, they can bypass us, no problem. So we have to be a lot more on the ball with regards to what's out there, so that we can, rather than be the gatekeeper, be more as of a guide for students nowadays. Because they can do so much on their own.
I don't even call myself an English teacher anymore. I'm a facilitator of advanced communication skills.
Ooh, that sounds good, actually.
You like that?
I know. I'm sticking that on my business cards.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
do you mind if Paul and I steal that? Because actually, that makes it sound really good.
Doesn't it though? It's brilliant. It took me hours. But do you know what the difference between a facilitator of advanced communication skills and an English teacher is?
No.
$100 an hour.
Fair enough. Yeah. Okay.
Fair enough. We're totally stealing that. Okay,
Yeah,
Paul.
definitely.
Okay.
Yes.
Good.
Yes. Okay. Just kind of drop down a little bit here. There's been an interesting comment which I'll come to in a minute, which I'd like your thoughts on. But there's a quick question here. I'd love to try to use AI with my KG students. Will it be applicable?
KG, what's KG?
Kindergarten, I'm assuming.
Kindergarten.
Chinese little ones. Okay.
Okay, to use, say, if you
Right.
could repeat the question.
I'd love to try to use AI with my kindergarten students. Will it be applicable?
Actually, yes, because I've seen some of the stuff. Some people are using ChatGPT to write graded readers.
Wow.
Oh.
And you can put in, when this first started, I think it was Scott Thornberry, put in specifically what he wanted. He said, I want something at an A2 level, blah, 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 and put in a lot of different parameters and said, come up with a story. And it came up with a brilliant story. And he said, better than what I would have done. You know, so yeah, I think we can use it for anything. It's, you know, any level, any communication level. Some of the systems now are voice activated, so the kids don't have to write or type. They can just talk to it. And why not? And my whole idea with this upskilling, one of the side things, and I'm doing the talk today on this, is I think we should be teaching these skills in junior high school and high school. Instead of teaching the periodic table, instead of teaching Shakespeare, which I'll never use, although they say it gives you culture, but there's the rub. You know, we should be teaching them skills, you know, finance skills, how to save money, how to communicate, how to work together as a team, instead of saying, oh, well, you know, don't be a bully. Why don't we teach them how to work together? You know, instead of saying, don't do this, show them what they should do. And I really think it calls for, you know, overhauling the entire system of education. And we should start at kindergarten.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, it does make sense to start down there, because if we are going to overhaul the education system, there's no point starting at university, because they've spent the entire, well, all their educational lives in the previous system. So why change it now? With the little ones, you can change it and they will go through the new system. So yeah, it does make sense. And yeah, I mean, let's face it, kids today are born with a smartphone in their hands. I'm not bad with modern technology, but my son has me licked.
Same with me.
I'm sat there going, I think I know what to do. Dad, you're so old. Dad.
Yep.
He's like, I love you, son, but go away now before I just get really jealous.
Yeah. Are you still on Facebook, Paul? They say it's just
I'm
old people.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
Old.
Me too, actually. Yeah, I'm still on Facebook. Okay.
I remember MySpace.
Yeah.
I remember MySpace. I'm still trying to log into mine.
Right.
I remember ICQ.
Remember that? Yeah. Now I'm going back to when my hair was a different color. Right. Okay. There was a comment posted earlier on, which I just want to get your thoughts on, if I may.
Sure.
The technology that we have now was made by people from the old school. Nowadays, learners are superficial and dependent. They aren't used to working hard. That's why they fail all the time.
I don't know that they fail all the time. They fail based on the old ways. That doesn't mean that they're failing on what life has now. I think we, as the old people, are failing at things now, like you said. When it comes to technology, your kids know more than you. So it's actually you, the old school practitioner, who's failing, not them. It's the test is wrong. That's what it is. I heard a brilliant quote the other day. It was done, a friend of mine made this talk, and he brought up a talk about Einstein, Einstein went into the classroom one day with a test, and his assistant said, "But Einstein, you gave the same test last year." And he said, "I know." And he said, "But isn't there a problem with that?" He said, "Same questions, but different answers this year." So
Good point.
the answers change.
Yeah,
Brilliant. Isn't that a great story? I'm glad
yeah,
I solved that.
I think. I mean, I think I've heard that one myself actually, and it's true. As technology evolves, as thoughts evolve, as principles and ideologies evolve, then yeah, we are going to get new answers. I mean, language
Yeah.
itself evolves all the
Yeah.
time. You know, again, it's probably worthwhile studying a little bit of Shakespeare, because let's face it, how Shakespeare was written and how we speak English today, really quite different. Shakespeare would probably look at us and go, "You speak a foreign language to me." So,
Well,
but
I would love to say that to him right now, but he
well,
speaks
yes.
one for me.
But the interesting thing is that Shakespeare was kind of the first dictionary, because he was the first one to actually codify the spelling of English, because he basically flatly refused to allow anybody to print it in anything other than his spelling. So yeah.
Yes, but being an American, Paul, we certainly get rid of all his spelling and yours too.
Yeah, well,
True.
well,
You
I mean,
did.
as
Thank
well,
Webster.
I actually used to have I began my English language journey actually out in Japan, and I had an American coworker. So my answer is, I speak English and you guys speak wrong. So there we go.
Nice. Now I'm stealing that.
By all means.
Yeah.
Of course, we used to have wonderful debates about English, you know, American English, British English, and so on. And of course, my answer is, I am English. So there we go. I win.
My answer is, who won the war?
Oh,
Now we won't go there. Anyway.
Hey, we had far more important things to do. We were busy picking on the French at the time. Much more fun. Anyway, I think we have time for one more question. Is it possible that we could adapt the curriculum used to match the students' needs for work aspiration?
I would say, you know, it's a general question. That's very hard. I would say maybe 50% of it.
Okay.
Maybe 50% of it. I originally was going to be a math teacher. I never thought I would teach English. And my whole idea was I wanted to make math, instead of just learning formulas and everything else, I wanted to teach it in a practical way. Like, here's how you can do it. I remember watching a TV where a math teacher was teaching inner city kids by dividing drugs. You know, not what I was going to do, but the thing is, they were engaged. One interesting thing that I read when I was researching this was that it's 60%, 80% of children under 18 in the United States don't know how to open a bank account. By the time they reach university, that only drops to 60%. So even just basic finance in math, teaching them, you know, interest, teaching them tax, teaching them how to think, teaching them about credit. I mean, if we had taught this in young ages, I taught my son when he was like 6. I took him into a toy store, said, "Buy anything you want. Here's $5. And he learned quickly how to read price tags and realized at the end of the day, he said, if I save this $5 and don't buy anything, can I come back next week with an extra 5 and buy more? So, you know, kids are smart enough to learn. So we have to retool, I would say 50% of what we have now and make it practical so they can use it for their future and make them interested.
Yeah.
Hope that helped.
Well, yeah, I think it's one thing we need to keep reminding ourselves as teachers. Kids are far more capable than sometimes I think we give them credit for. They do constantly surprise. You always get one in every class who is right on the ball all the way through, and they pick up on everything you say and do, and they spit it back at you, even though you don't realize that they have picked up on everything. And it just astounds you what they throw back. So there are times when we have to realize it's like we can push harder than I think we want to, because we're kind of scared that we may upset them. Hey, your kids, as long as it's fun, they'll have a go at anything.
Yeah. Well, it all comes down to, you know, we really have to think about what their real needs are and what the needs are going to be in the future. And we as teachers, you know, we didn't get into this for fame or fortune. We got into it to help students. And we need to rethink, okay, so what do they really need help with? And let's get what we need so we can help them.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I completely agree. No, I've never spoken to a teacher who said, I want to be rich from this job. Though, interestingly enough, there was a celebrity in the US, I can't remember who it was, who said it was about 2 weeks into the pandemic and said, after 2 weeks of homeschooling, it's like, I don't understand how teachers can do this 52 weeks a year. It's like, I think teachers are worth $1 million and more. It's like, I completely agree. Completely agree. Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much indeed.